Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mercurial Gems. I'm Jen.
I'm Vi.
And today is finally our turn to break down our generation's Pluto, which we ponder and kind of rage about, I would say, pretty regularly.
Yeah, it's a good day to record Pluto Scorpio.
Yeah, we feel very Pluto Scorpio mood, and so this is coming with very fresh angst behind it for our Pluto Generation series. So there's a couple components we'll go into for Pluto Scorpio. So there is definitely a couple components to go into for this Pluto Scorpio. We were pretty passionate about this when we recorded Pluto Leo. So if you are a Pluto Scorpio in your birth chart, so look up where Pluto was when you were born, you might want to pay attention to the Pluto Leo too, because we are very interconnected to Pluto Leo. And the fact that Pluto Scorpio makes a square with Pluto Leo, and we are now in current times in Pluto Aquarius. So that is our other squares. Over the course of the next 30 years, there's going to be Pluto Scorpio getting their official Pluto square. So it is kind of this like kicked up bubbling point between a lot of the themes of what roots were laid down when Pluto Scorpio occurred, which was 1984 to 1995.
So a huge chunk of our millennial crew is Pluto Scorpio, which I think is really important to like remember if you can't remember the Pluto of itself.
Yeah. And Scorpio is actually at home in Pluto. It holds a lot of Pluto dynamics behind it, but it's a pretty dark and intense Pluto sign, in that a big overarching theme of millennials was going to be to purge and work through tons of darkness, tons of shadow, tons of secrets, tons of death and rebirth cycles. And as millennials, I mean, we are exhausted. Like, it feels so fatiguing. I think in the bigger scheme of history, the work that our generation has done on this planet is gonna hold just like major shifts of before and after our existence on this planet.
Just how many different times has society already shifted? I'm a younger millennial, so I've only walked the earth 30 years, but even if you've been here 40, like I feel like the world has not been the same as it was in like 3-year chunks since getting here. Like I don't understand what grandpa's talking about back in my day, back in my like 3 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've been through a lot as millennials, but let's talk about some of the main themes of Scorpio. And it always is helpful to see where Pluto is in your birth chart so that you can understand. So we have the intro video if you do want to dive into that. Scorpio is connected to the 8th house. It is a energy that I think a lot of people have a hard time fully describing. I think the stereotype ends up being like more sexual and more just like dark and kind of mysterious and secretive. But what Scorpio's energy actually is it is a water sign. So it holds the same sensitivity as fellow water signs, Cancer and Pisces, but it's fixed water, which is an oxymoron, but it stabilizes the system of water. So it is constantly holding really, really strong intensity. And it still holds the energetic undertones of water, of craving to merge, craving to exchange, understanding that in the container, we should be striving for a oneness. Scorpio wants like full, obsessive, no block energy exchange. At its core root, it really craves that depth. And
if we're not soul merging, what's the point?
Yeah. And so the obsessive tendencies of Scorpio really come from the fact that it's hard to hold self when it comes to water, because water inherently understands the wholeness, I think, of everything in existence as one together. So in the 8th house and in Scorpio and in Pluto, we always see themes of death and rebirth. We always see themes of merging energy. We always see that once you've interacted with something in a really real, vulnerable, authentic way, you can't be the you were before that. So that is like
Transformed.
what's meant by death and rebirth is once you've interacted with a certain energy, you can no longer not know what you now know. And Scorpio, as a generational planet in Pluto, we have had so many things that we have learned that we cannot go back because we now know something too far that we can't move normal. Our version of self has been kicked down again and again. Like our reality and what has been revealed within our timeline has eliminated being able to actually tolerate the perceived normal because we have so much information. So, a few of the themes just to bullet point them, and then we'll go into the history of what happened. But a few things that feel very Pluto Scorpio to me is the shared resources and power that our generation has had to mesh with. Like, I think of landlords and just how there's all these companies that now own power in even the political sector because of money. Exchange of resources is really plugged into Scorpio, and that has been so exploited into Plutonian extremes. Like the people that own these networks, own these companies.
There's over 1,000 billionaires in today as we are recording this, but just when Pluto Scorpio was happening in real time, we barely had 100. The current wealth gap is so vast that the top 1% combined income vastly differentiates from the bottom 90%'s combined wealth. We're talking 3 million people versus 290 million others. Combined wealth is smaller than 3 million people with a lot of wealth, which is obviously fucked. No one should have so much money that the bottom 90% of people can't afford their shit.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, some other big things that feel very Pluto Scorpio is the cancel culture that I think gets a lot of pushback from other generations that Pluto Scorpio just inherently understands the importance of. That it's not to make everyone so sensitive that they don't share anything. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of things that we have normalized within the system actually ends up perpetuating a lot of violences to a lot of people because we have a culture that's inherently violent to many minority groups. And when you look at the systematic ripple effect of what we have normalized, it's very important to go back to all the people that have been put into positive light or positions of power or even just celebrity culture and realize that like you can produce something that can be artistic, but if there is not authenticity that reigns in your life story and you use the gift of whatever art like was able to like push you into maybe a different tax bracket or you had more resources, like if you don't use your power for good and you end up using it to do worse things, like you're just as exploitive as anything else and you don't then deserve to get the credit for whatever it is you produce because you're not letting that power of just people being able to resonate with your art be something that actually carries any depth behind it.
Well,
so
9 times out of 10 artists who start from the bottom and get up there, like you're supported by the community that cannot afford to be where you are, and then you hit like billionaire status and you merge with that cult like following versus being like, let me redistribute my wealth to those who got me here.
Right. And I think this is very like Pluto Leo square that we are now seeing the worst fallouts of celebrity culture, realizing that a lot of people that were glorified actually had very dirty, nasty histories. They were very exploitive. They took advantage of a lot of women within their system. And so we've called everybody out that has existed on this planet. We have aired out things. Epstein files feels very Pluto Scorpio square core. And a lot of it started actually within the time frame of Pluto Scorpio's date. There was a lot of seeds planted for this nasty white men culture patriarchy that we are now dealing with in its most exploitive tick yet. So that's very Pluto Scorpio to me. I also feel that mental health is probably the biggest staple to Pluto Scorpio. If we have done anything in maybe this sounds very bleak, but in a positive way, I think a lot of our stuff doesn't inherently hold the energy of positivity. Not that it doesn't have positive effects, but I wouldn't say we come on.
Pluto Scorpio wasn't given a good hand. We were raised under if you work hard enough, you too can live the American dream. What American dream, Grandpa? I've worked real fucking hard, and Jen's worked even harder.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it's not that we're trying to be bleak, but we kind of, in true Scorpio fashion, spent a good majority, probably, of our life being told, just do this, and this will be your outcome. We were lied to. And I feel like lies end up in that Scorpio bracket. And so then to be where we are today, if anything, one thing that has come from it, and I know this is where you're getting at, is that we have blown the door open on what it actually means to be mentally unwell.
Yeah, mental health.
This isn't some crazy person. This is a human being who exists and feels things and just needs additional assistance and additional help. And realistically, I think the narrative that most other generations give to the Pluto Scorpio generation is that we're lazy, that we don't want to work, that all of autism didn't exist in my day. Just because you didn't have an autism diagnosis, I can see it writing up the lines to here, sir.
Yeah, all of the secrets that have really been revealed from our generation, the stones that have been turned over, is really learning the fullest of history. We now have the internet, so we've been able to track and hold and share stories and share just history across larger space and time. And because of that, we now know a lot of people's lived experiences, and so many people that would have mental health issues in generations before would just be locked up. They'd go down the pipeline of just dying a lot younger.
Or kept secret in attics and basements.
Yeah, families would hide them. They wouldn't even admit to having a child that didn't fit the societal norms, or they'd be sent off. Or because it was so secret, there was so limited resources for them to just be a human being in society exactly as they are. A lot of them would just die really young. The life expectancy was so much lower because there wasn't resources and research and care and adjustments being made. And we have to know that every single human deserves basic human needs met and dignity. And I think just by seeing how atrocious the mental health hospitals were, how many people were harmed within the systems of mental health, how many doctors just completely gaslit people's lived experience, and we didn't even have management of so many symptoms. And now there are so many people, thanks to modern medicine, that are able to function within our society, but we still don't really see the rollout of societal programs that really are to where they even should be yet at this point in history. And yet, as someone who works with a lot of disabled people in physical therapy, I've seen how exploitive the system can be in the care and resources that it has. But at least we have diagnoses now, and those diagnoses still might have poor control over them by the insurance companies and the health institutions and just overall what you can get. But at least you can find your people that are experiencing the exact same feeling as you, can at least tell you, like, I am with you, you are not alone, and you don't have to not believe your symptoms or try to shove them down or just feel like you can't even exist and then, be a part of the terrible number that is suicide. And these were the options beforehand. I think Pluto Scorpio, as dark as we can be, we know how important it
We're
is.
realistic. Is it really
Yeah.
dark, or are we just calling it what it is?
Yeah.
Because like, I love the Pluto Leo generation. I really do. However, like Leo paints everything with like a level of whimsy that, like, don't get me wrong, like we definitely need sometimes, but that whimsy and that like painting everything gold is exactly how we are now like dealing with the repercussions, because in Pluto Leo is when, people who had profound amounts of wealth stopped, you know, donating that wealth. Like, they would donate and build a library, and that library would have that rich man's name on it because he gave all the money needed to that library. And you used to have companies that would honestly compete with each other for who has the best benefits, who treats their employees the best because they have so much money. And nowadays we're living in such an economic wealth gap that, like, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, but the average cost of rent for a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,500. And even if you worked 40 hours a week at $7.25, you'd only make, before taxes, $1,100 and some change.
So the resources definitely do not like level up and match. And yeah, that's kind of the overview of mental health, like in its purest form. And as two people that, have diagnoses, like it was really hard to get diagnosed. And like, I'm very thankful to have the resource of therapy. I'm so grateful to have people that understand, but I still am just frustrated that as a system, I still have to operate really beyond what my brain's limits are. And I love my neurodivergence. I love being autistic and ADHD. I think it makes me just a creative and beautiful person. I love the way that I can interlink concepts, and I love all these things about myself. And that's a huge win. But I also just can't function in the
society that is right now as we're recording. It forces us to work at burnout or not have enough to survive.
Yeah. And as someone who has worked in healthcare now for 16 years, like I've just given so much time and energy to the system. And it's so sad that we are at this point, like, especially this is definitely more US focused, but we don't have like much paid time off. We don't get a lot of resources to make something sustainable from burnout. And I do think that that is another big Pluto Scorpio theme, is just the burnout of being overly exploited by power systems. And the other thing that felt really Pluto Scorpio to me as an overview is but we have the ability to research anything and look into anything. We are definitely, with this Pluto Aquarius generation, are now going through what is going to be the square to our Pluto Scorpio. And I think a lot of that is the struggle of misinformation. And that's going to be a huge thing to battle out.
Between AI, propaganda.
Yeah.
And but on the other side of that, we have people out there using their phones, recording multiple points of views of what's really happening. At the time of recording this, there's been a huge ice incident within 24 hours. I'm sure that's going to become more normalized, but the fact that we had eyewitnesses recording and there's multiple perspectives of what actually happened, it's easy to differentiate the actual truth from what is being said. But if we weren't out there doing that, that wouldn't happen. And that feels very Pluto Scorpio, trying to help stopping the spread of misinformation.
Yeah, and I just think there is a sort of decision paralysis that Scorpio has had to deal with. And this really links into, in all of the Pluto episodes, we've talked about how learning the sister sign to your Pluto, so we're Pluto Scorpio, so the sister sign is Taurus, that can help you alchemize some of the intense energy of over Plutonian, like rabbit holes that can occur within your Pluto. There's some really beautiful alchemy to be found across the way and integrating some of the energy. And Pluto Scorpio's decision paralysis and the fact that we can go into researching anything and we can literally like do anything in a lot of ways thanks to technology has also led to this self accountability that you have to create of what is too much, what do I need to know, what do I not need to know, what do I want to put boundaries on for myself, and how much exposure I give myself to certain things. And it really is just like teetering this line of reality versus taking in so much you can't even exist in this reality. And that is like a really intense feeling as a generation that I think all of us relate with, that other groups just don't understand. And it sounds so simple, like just don't be on your phone so much, but it's like it's
That's
a deeper,
almost impossible in this day and age.
it's a deeper feeling. And so Taurus is the most present, the most grounded, the most of this earth. And the fact that our alchemy exists by learning to pay attention to our basic needs, make sure we're eating enough, make sure we're drinking enough, make sure we're sleeping enough, make sure that we actually get outside and touch grass, because the internet is so dissociative that you can forget that you exist on this planet without integrating a lot of earth energy.
Say what you will about the yoga girlies, the somatic healing girlies, anyone who does tell you to go touch grass, but if you're Pluto Scorpio, they're trying to help you. They're doing what they're supposed to.
We don't have any embodiment. We've had a really hard time existing in our bodies as a generation because of all of the pain that actually exists there. It's feeling what it feels like to be a human on this timeline. And the Taurus helps you remember that the basics do need to be staples in your life and routine to be able to make it.
I'd also like to tack on that there's a huge difference between finding yourself and finding your body from a place of love and doing it out of a place of hate. So like, for example, if you're like, well, I'm a gym girly, I already go at like 5 days a week, but you're in the gym being like, I can do one more because I hate this part of myself and I want it to be better. You're going to have way different results and energetic rebalancing if you're going in and you're like, oh, this is where my body's at today. That's okay. We're doing it. I appreciate my body for showing up. And, this is a journey. This isn't just like a sprint to the finish line. It's two different worlds.
The fact that most therapists have taught what are 5 things you can see? What are 4 things you can hear? That is so Taurus balance for what Pluto Scorpio's just existentialism is and what it feels like. Yeah, the other main point that I wrote was that Taurus alchemy is also just remembering what the planet was before and after the internet, because the internet really came with Pluto Scorpio. And we are kind of going to be, the older millennials get, we are going to be the last group that knew the world beforehand. And that makes us like a really big anchor to planet Earth before we had this kind of whole other planet within the planet, because the internet is kind of its own world. We have the split.
It's called the World Wide Web.
We have the split between realities, and I'm not saying one is necessarily wasn't meant to happen, but it is definitely
you're not meant to stay there.
A very interesting mix to have to dance between both of those worlds. So yeah, let's talk about the actual history of the Pluto Scorpio generation. So if we look at history, so from 1490 to 1502, Pluto is in Scorpio, 1736 to 1748. And then from 1984 to 1995, we're obviously just going to talk about the most recent history. But one of the first things in 1984 that came down the line when Pluto moved into Scorpio was we got 60 Minutes. And 60 Minutes would have been the first national TV broadcast that was talking about crimes and especially child abuse, because before that we didn't have like actual coverage on that. So many people were getting away with so much because it wasn't even being talked about in a bigger way.
Yeah.
This is how a lot of crimes before the internet got so bad is we couldn't cross-check between counties. So when criminals would travel and do crimes in different spots, there was no record keeping. And the internet made a lot of things a lot harder to get away with, which feels very Pluto Scorpio, but 60 Minutes was right at the start of that.
Yeah.
Also, the AIDS crisis, I really link to a lot of in Pluto Libra, but Pluto Scorpio definitely dealt with Live Aid and just the overall, like, the kind of the end point of explaining, like, these people are sick and it doesn't matter what you believe in a moral sense of like why we're here. You cannot let someone just suffer and die because you don't think that they are worthy as people. Everyone deserves basic dignity.
Libra looked away because it didn't fit within its frame, but Pluto Scorpio came in and said, no, do something.
So they made everything very visible. So Live Aid was huge because a bunch of artists came together and raised money for AIDS. You also started seeing a lot more political action behind it towards the very beginning of Pluto Scorpio, because the amount of people that died from AIDS was completely preventable if we would have acted sooner. And yeah, I mean, talk about death cycles and like just the disgust of trying to keep something closeted and hidden because it was affecting people that a lot of people disagreed with. But it's basic human dignity that started a lot of what would be mental health work down the line. We also had the introduction of DNA fingerprinting, which felt very Pluto Scorpio because that unlocked like so much of the tech that would have been into scanning for crimes, revealing secrets, being able to track people in a way that we couldn't before, which is a more positive because fingerprinting like solved some crimes that like we would have never had answers for had we not gotten fingerprinting technology. So that was like pretty freaking huge. We also had antidepressants become commercially available, which
for
feels
the most depressed generation.
Yeah, they were prepping for what was to come. We started seeing the original pushback of the Palestinian people against Israel in 1987. So when it comes down to thinking of the Pluto squares and what's happening in current time, I think that was a very important point to make.
That this all started during the very early stages of Pluto Scorpio. So we're in those early degrees of Pluto Aquarius. So
the squaring is happening. The tension is at its complete breaking point.
Yeah.
And then we had The Simpsons came out in 1989, which I thought was we were just discussing this before we even started this episode because The Simpsons revealed a lot of the corruption kind of behind the scenes in like subtle, goofy ways. But
yeah, it definitely like made him seem like a prophet. I think he was just seeing shit behind closed doors, and this was his way of telling us without telling us, but telling us nonetheless.
Yeah. So that was just an interesting one to note within the time frame. We also had the first intergovernment panel on climate crisis and actually discovered that the carbon dioxide link was what was creating temperature change. And so there started being the starts of political action, which in this current square,
AI is the largest carbon footprint problem.
We are getting just a complete backtracking on a lot of this. So it is also at that square kind of heat at this point in history.
I think there's only 2 countries not a part of the worldwide climate agreement, and we are one of them.
Yes. Clarence Thomas was also put on the Supreme Court in 1991. Obviously, that had huge backlash. Like these Supreme Court seats in general, absolutely crazy concept, but that definitely started a lot of problems. His story is worth its own separate conversation. We actually saw the first sexual abuse allegations be put against Michael Jackson in 1993. We ended up revealing even more secrets beyond that of like what happened, but that was probably the first celebrity I remember in just like my young age being talked about and like doing something like
I learned
wrong.
a fact about that recently. He had just been to either Israel or Palestine, and he was really disgusted by how they were being treated over there, and he was going to start speaking up about it and resisting it. And it's just crazy that the next, like within 3 weeks of that happening is when it came out about the him being a pedophile. And it's just crazy knowing that information in today's society, where like, as Palestine and Israel are at like such a detrimental precipice over there, that over here in America we are actually actively fighting the authoritarian part of our government to release a giant list of pedophiles in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Schindler's List was created in 1993. That felt relevant and important. We don't need to go into that anymore, but there it is. And then Amazon was founded in 1994, which totally, I mean, I guess some people would think it really made life better, but it hasn't.
It did for a minute. There were certain things. There was a point in time. I say this all of the time. There was a point in time where the internet and just all the technological advances were really, truly helping us. I think we got greedy, and with that greed, thank you, Pluto Capricorn, just living through Pluto Capricorn, I'm not blaming Pluto Capricorn generation, like living through Pluto Capricorn, the greed got to us, and now we've flown so far to the sun where even the guy who invented AI is like, it'll probably be the end of humanity, but like, keep using it, buddy.
And the amount of resources we've now given to Jeff Bezos, I mean, we've basically, you know, you have to basically get your business onto these platforms of greed to even have a chance, and yet these platforms don't give back anywhere near enough.
Well, it's created
to be holding
like
the power that they're holding.
A crazy inflation deficit. There are some things that you just will not find in a small town that you have to get off of Amazon because they are the majority now.
Yeah, it's a problem. And then eBay was created in 1995 at the very end of Pluto Scorpio. That feels like a way that we exchanged resources in a different way.
Yeah,
so I thought that
I don't
was
want
kind
this
of
trash. I can auction it off to you.
Yeah.
Death and rebirth.
Which eBay, like, in its hype, like, I just remember everyone talking about that. Like, it was so serious.
My dad was one of the OG resellers. Like, we had so much random shit in our house.
It was a moment. I think it probably was connected with why we all thought Beanie Babies were going to save our lives.
1,000%. And not save our lives, but they were going to be our life savings.
Life savings. Which was going to save my life. I mean, it felt like
fair.
It was a part of my 10-year plan. I don't know why. So this is just the history. And now in every Pluto episode, we have gone into an interview. So what we will do is Vi and I will just share a little bit of our lived experience and some of the same kind of interview form of some of the themes that we can see in our own life as we were like living the Pluto Scorpio just experience, and some of it in just like a more personal story format. So you can keep watching and check out our interview. We'd love to hear your thoughts below.
So do you want to go ahead and tell me a little bit about your lived experience as a Pluto Scorpio?
Yeah, so I was born in 1992. My Pluto lands in the third house for me in Scorpio. And yeah, I think a lot of my childhood was I had Pluto Virgo parents. Both of my parents are Pluto Virgo. And I do feel like growing up, there was a lot of expectation around church culture, purity culture, some of the extremes of their generation. I very much felt like there was one way to be and that we just needed to strive for it. So I was raised very religious in a just like evangelical cult. And that was like a huge part of my childhood. Like this was going to church not only on Sundays, but throughout the week. It was a lot of the themes of like what I was allowed to engage in. So as a little Pluto Scorpio kid, I remember just really craving truth. And I was definitely the kid constantly questioning things at church, driving people crazy with my deep questions. But like, wait, if this is this, then what is this? And like, just being really frustrated that no one really seemed to give me answers that met the level of depth that I was craving. So I remember I got really into reading as a kid, and I had a very like Matilda undertone to my childhood where I would just go to the library and read a lot of books.
Sneakily read a lot of books.
Yes, in secret, because there was a lot of things that my parents could control in like what movies I watched, what shows I watched, but it felt like books were just a chance to understand perspectives that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise, because I was even very controlled in the kinds of kids I hung out with because of just the church trauma in general. And the movies and music truly were like, I feel like dark and raunchy in a way that really was like not okay. Like I remember as a kid begging to listen to mainstream music. I just remember like, you know, in retrospect, I do think a lot of like the culture was really pushing what the norms were in terms of lyrics and styles of music and styles of movies. And there was a lot of exposure to themes that had never been put on TV. Like I remember the parental controls being put on music was like such a like staple within my childhood, because I would like crave to have songs that were not edited in like the parental advisory mode. Like I got so frustrated having to listen to like clean versions of stuff and have my things checked, and like I just remember being so frustrated by that, which feels very Pluto Scorpio. There was this whole like darker, deeper world that I just felt like I couldn't get access.
The redacted version.
Yeah, couldn't get access to. And I just remember that being so frustrating. So I turned to a lot of books within that. And I also remember the internet really got more popular in my middle school years. And I remember just like being obsessed with going on AOL Instant Messenger. It felt like the only thing that was important in my life was to get on AOL every night. And my parents were very strict with my use of the internet, very untrusting of it, would only give me the smallest amount of time, and they would like check over my shoulder constantly, which I hated. I was like, give me privacy, which feels very Pluto Scorpio too. I wanted my own space and I was not allowed to have it. I wanted my picture on the internet. That was a huge fight. I remember that being like something I cried about for like a year straight. Like I was so frustrated that some of my friends were allowed to have their pictures on the internet and I could not. Like
I will say your parents were probably smart for that one.
I know. In retrospect, it makes sense. And then I'm just going in chat rooms talking to just the nastiest men and thinking that I am finally living my life, you know? Like, and it's a problem. I don't blame my parents. I just remember the angst and the feeling. And yeah, AOL was like so wild, just that we could enter into chat rooms, talk to strangers, talk to like anyone we really wanted to find on the internet. That blew my mind. Chat roulette used to blow my mind, that I could just go on this website and webcam with people around the world.
Yeah.
It got a lot of darker and dirtier later, but in its prime, it was
basically the first
It wasn't.
dating app.
It wasn't. It used to just be talk to people around the world, which was so fun. I remember just being amazed that I could talk to anybody. I remember that feeling. And yeah, it was just like a very interesting world, because once everyone started showing things online, like the problems of the internet came down really quick. Starting in high school, I just remember people having like photos getting leaked like out, and that was like a huge problem. I remember in my like high school years, I remember just like people starting to experience like internet bullying that would have like that didn't exist before, so it was something that was very new and being talked about. A lot of like apps were not popular until I got into college, but like MySpace would have been the peak, and then once I got into high school, everyone started making Facebook. But it's so interesting that we went from like talking about certain things to all of a sudden then like everything was like, what did someone put on Facebook? What was posted on
Twitter.
this? What did someone say? Like it just became so normalized in our language so quick. And like going home and like it was weird to do anything but just go on the internet, because that just like felt like what you were supposed to do. And then yeah, the rollout of apps was really interesting, to like build up a MySpace, and then MySpace kind of died, and then to build up Facebook, and then Facebook kind of died, at least for a bigger chunk of millennials.
And evolved in a way that is gross.
Yeah, and then to like just be down the line now and like watching all these different apps and websites and stuff like play on your time and energy and like how much you want to give to it, like all of a sudden it felt like there was just constant work to be done and to build upon. And that's like a lot of what I remember in terms of like just Pluto Scorpio. And I really do think like us having even YouTube, once YouTube rolled out, it became really kind of beautiful because what you didn't maybe see in your day-to-day interactions with people, like you got to start seeing vulnerability online that actually matched what you were feeling versus like maybe what was around you. So I remember it feeling really good to like see people doing like art on YouTube and creating like covers to songs. Like I just remember that being really magical to me.
Is
That
there anything else not internet related that you remember through being Pluto Scorpio?
really just the fact that they treated celebrities really awful. Like I just remember a lot of just feeling a lot of pain for the people that were, especially women celebrities. Like I just remember like going to the store and seeing magazines just like trash talking everybody, and that like really hurt me. I was like, why do we just talk about people like that? Like I remember feeling very frustrated by that as well. Like I just remember like I would
It's so
love
Leonine of you.
love Amanda Bynes and then watching her just get like wrecked. Love Britney Spears, watching her get wrecked like by like,
Yeah.
and then like someone would gain weight and just I was like a chubby kid and I got bullied a lot for it. And then to see in the magazines like them zooming in on someone's stomach and going like she
Yeah.
hates herself and
But it
like
wouldn't even be real weight. It would just be like, honestly, she probably just had like a fat burrito.
it was so mean. And I just remember like starting to feel so gross and perceived that like people are so harsh in how they view you. I remember that being a really big staple of my childhood too, just like watching how we tore people down and just wanting to be a little spreader of love. So I
Mm.
was like, I remember really being impacted even by like the punk and emo scene. Like I appreciated people talking about real and heavier feelings because I was seeing so many people in self-harm cycles around me and just seeing how the media was harming certain people. And I remember that all just feeling really heavy and not really knowing what to do with it, a lot of it, but knowing that like it should be better than what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you? You are a zillennial, so you are cusper.
Yeah, so I came in at the last second. I'm a critical degree Pluto. So fun. Love that for me. I was born in 1995. So although I am Pluto Scorpio, I feel like I don't have much like remembrance of actual Pluto Scorpio because I was literally like 2 months old before we swapped into Pluto Sagittarius. But with that being said, I remember growing up. So it's so funny to listen to you and just that 3 year age gap. Internet started becoming like really popular when I was about fourth or fifth grade, which is really great because that's when my parents got divorced actually. So it was just like a nice place to be myself because I was a kid of divorce. So I ended up at two houses. I don't think at any point that I can actually really remember in my life I had like a stable home. I just stayed here and this was my house. Which feels
Pluto is in the 12th house.
feels very Pluto Scorpio to me because my 12th house, like my subconscious, like I did not feel like either home was my home. It was my dad's house and my mom's house, and I was just a visitor there. And I was at my dad's house. This is also important to note. My dad is Pluto Virgo. My mom is Pluto Libra. So these stories are going to sound almost vastly different. And I really do think it has to do with the fact that they are technically two different generations themselves. My dad understood that the internet was going to have some level of power in the future. I don't think he understood to what degree, and he's definitely flown too close to the sun at this point, but he understood that I needed to know what was happening because it was going to change rapidly. I remember in sixth grade, we still had typing class. Like it was very important to know how to type on a keyboard without looking. I'm too dyslexic to this day. I still look. But I took this class and I barely passed. But I remember specifically building a business on a floppy disk. a floppy disk, for those of you watching at home who are not from the 90s, was like this little plastic, it basically is what an SD card is today, but like in this form. And then it just kept getting smaller and smaller, and now we have all this cloud storage, which is even crazier to think of. But I remember playing with floppy disk and learning a little bit of that like coding side of the internet, because I didn't expect for so many workarounds to come around. MySpace coding felt really important on MySpace.
Very research, Scorpio. Like, let's learn how to code and create.
Yeah, for my own unique value.
Yeah.
All that coding felt obsolete pretty quickly with Facebook, but I was a Tumblr kid. I actually missed the AOL and Messenger because at my mom's house, I had like a way stricter, like could barely use the computer for like 1 hour if I was lucky, and it was basically to like check Facebook and do homework, period, get off. It wasn't like heavily monitored per se, like there was an honor system. I know for a fact they don't even know how to check history, so like I was pretty safe. I would kind of fuck around sometimes. Neopets, big priority. Death of that felt so sad. So anyway, my point is, to your point is, I remember the slow integration of the internet, but I still had Virgo Pluto dad who thought it was really important for us to, yes, keep up with technology, but he also lives in the woods, in the swamp, so he would let us have our like internet time, which was terrible because like internet service in the early 2000s in the woods is like your page has to load for 15 minutes anyway. You might as well go do something.
That is real. It used to move so slow. Like
So
just to
slow.
get on was like a 45-minute.
I have to like pause sometimes when I'm like annoyed that my page is taking 2 minutes to load, because I'm like, oh, check your privilege. Jeez. My dad would be like, yeah, you can use the internet, but I want you to like still go outside and be a kid, and he would get us like dirt bikes.
Gave that good tourist link.
Good tourist link, exactly. Mom, on the other hand, she liked when I could make her look good. Pluto Libra. So like I remember being kind of like this alternative kid that dressed in like preppy kid clothes, because honestly I didn't get to school clothes shop often. We actually had a hand-me-down rotation, and I happened to be right below a very preppy kid. So I was wearing like occasional Hollister or like all these cutesy clothes, but on the inside, not even on the inside, but like at school I was with like all the stage hand kids and like the little early emos that are now elder emos. For me, those themes didn't seem so dark, being someone who was like in an actively abusive household. Like I was like, oh, thank God someone else gets it. Like that wasn't dark to me, that was reality. So like I felt like some staple bands for me come high school were like Panic at the Disco,
System of a Down.
Yeah. Forever the Sickest Kids was like big. A Day to Remember, which actually formed in my hometown, so that in itself felt like crazy close. Like they really understood what I was going through. There's like a specific small town trauma there. It was just like all a very alternative energy, to be honest, at the end of the day. And the music is really where I found my escape, because I was a dancer. So when I wasn't at home, I was 90% of the time dancing. As I got into high school, I let dance be any activity that could potentially involve dance. So I got color guard. I got into acting. I wanted to do musical theater, but it turns out they don't want you to just be a background dancer. They want you to also sing. My performance art and like losing myself into music was like a really good grounder for me, as well as a Pluto Scorpio. It really helped me escape that 12th house for me, because reality was like I was living in like early childhood hell. And so it was really like a way for me to compartmentalize what was happening and continue forth, because like I kind of came out of the womb knowing that life was going to be different for me than it was for everyone else around me. And I didn't know why I knew that. I just knew it. Feeling it the most though when I got to college, because for me, like I've moved around. I started my story with I didn't feel like I had home at mom or dad's house. Well, then I got kicked out at 17. So then I was a homeless teen at 17, also still going to high school, also dual enrolled in college. So I graduated with high honors, and I also completed my first year of college all while going through probably like one of the biggest T traumas for my brain at that time in my life. And then that just kind of escalated because from that moment on till about 27, I moved 31 times. So that like no sense of home just got like louder and louder. And I think for me, I've went through a lot of personal death and rebirth cycles in my life that like when another one comes up, I'm just like, oh, all right, time to go like research my brain again.
Yeah, both of our stories really mirror like just having a lot of feelings that we didn't have verbiage for, but then found them later because our generation has been good about making verbiage,
Yeah.
but both being like queer and not really like seeing some sprinkles of representation like
We
come
were both
out, but
later life queers too, I think is
yeah.
important. Like I did queer things, but I was like, no, but I'm straight. And I
Well,
think
it's
you
because
were the
the celebrity
same.
culture got so destroyed in the media for that very thing that it became something so scary
I think
to.
that's part of your Leo moon link because I miss celebrity culture.
Well, it was
Being
part of
like
the reason
a
everyone was homophobic was it was an example of normal. Like on TV shows, the way they were making fun of people, like the way you heard lines being thrown out, they were getting that from movies and culture. So they were
okay.
using that as like fuel to normalize conversations. But then for people that were trying to figure out like who and what they were, like it
There
wasn't
was a
safe.
turning point
Yeah.
around 2013 where that all shifted, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because we started having words for, or like verbiage for the things that we didn't know
Yeah.
until we knew. I think that's also, you kind of mentioned that earlier on in the episode. I think that's like a blessing and a curse of Pluto Scorpio specifically is like we can't unknow what we know. We may not know what to do with it because Scorpio in general is an energy that tends to know a lot of information, but they don't show their hand often. Jenn and I both, Jenn's a natal third house Pluto. Right now, Pluto is going to be in my third house for the next 30 years. So it's like not lost on me that we are making and talking about an entire generational series of Pluto to try and maybe help other people understand and link it together. I just think it's really important that like
Yeah.
we talk about it all, and if we didn't talk about it we wouldn't know. And I think that's like also healing for Scorpio too, is like learning how to share your secrets, because your shadows aren't the problem, it's everyone thinking they're a problem that's the problem.
Yeah, and exposure, once again, like we said at the very beginning of this episode, exposure to something that you haven't seen before, you can't not know once you know. And even if you really don't like it and you wish you didn't know, you can't erase information.
Yeah.
And because of that, as much as we have caused disruption in a lot of things.
I was going to say that we've also like created so much of a platform for healing in so many different directions because we've exposed those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is kind of our bigger takeaways on Pluto Scorpio. We'd love to hear some of your thoughts and experience. And if you are Pluto Scorpio, we send the biggest love. Sorry that we signed up for the craziest soul contract. We will get through it. And as we learned these lessons into Pluto Aquarius, I think it's just important to keep fighting for the things that matter, the things that we've learned along the way. And remember that we are closing out just like way bigger cycles and are always a part of bigger cycles than what we can just feel in the here and now. We will see you in the next episode. Bye.